The stars were cold and silent in the Tertius Nebula, a swirling mass of gas and dust at the edge of Zarkathi-controlled space. Fleet Commander Threskal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Will, watching the sensor screens with practiced ease. His fleet of 40 warships moved in perfect formation, a display of power that had broken the spirits of 17 civilizations before this day. The sensor operator's voice cut through the quiet. "Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel. Distance, 40,000 kilometers. Size, small, approximately frigate class." Threskal's tail swished with interest. An unknown ship in their territory was either a fool or a spy. Either way, it would make a pleasant diversion from their patrol. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a vessel unlike anything in the Zarkathi database. It had a strange design, almost primitive in its basic shape. Yet there was something about its lines that suggested purpose and efficiency. The hull was dark, reflecting little light, and its surface seemed to absorb the nebula's glow rather than reflect it. "Scan it," Threskal ordered. "Full military analysis. I want to know what weapons it carries, what species built it, and why it dares to enter hegemony space." The scanner technician worked quickly, sending out waves of detection energy toward the mysterious ship. The wait seemed longer than usual, and Threskal noticed his crew shifting uncomfortably at their stations. "Commander," the technician said slowly, "the results are unusual." "Explain." "The power signature is reading far beyond normal parameters. For a ship that size, the reactor output should not be possible. The armor composition contains elements our database does not recognize. And the weapons." The technician paused, double-checking his screen. "Sir, I count 73 separate weapon systems on a ship that size. Many use principles I cannot identify." Threskal felt a flutter of unease, but he pushed it aside. Fear was for lesser species. What of the crew? How many does it carry? Biological scans show 147 life forms. "But Commander, the internal conditions are extreme. High radiation levels, gravity compensation for a planet at least twice our standard, and the atmosphere. It would be toxic to most known species." Before Threskal could respond, the communications officer spoke up. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. Threskal had never seen this species before. The creature had smooth skin, forward-facing eyes like a predator, and an expression that seemed calm but alert. When it spoke, the translation came through clearly. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES, Indomitable, Earth Defense Fleet. You have entered Earth-protected space. State your intentions." Threskal allowed himself a small smile. Earth. He had never heard of it. These creatures were clearly new to space travel. Probably just discovered faster than light travel and thought they owned the stars. "Computer, search the database for Earth." The response came quickly. "Earth. Third planet. In a yellow star system. Sector 7. 9. 3. Classification. Death World. Level 12. The bridge went quiet. Death worlds were rare, representing less than 1% of all planets. They were places where everything seemed designed to kill, where survival required constant adaptation and ruthless efficiency. Only 3 known sapient species had evolved on death worlds, and all 3 were feared throughout the galaxy for their warrior nature. "Additional information," the computer continued. "Dominant species, Homo sapiens, common name, humans. Spacefaring status. Recent, approximately 180 standard years. Warning. Death world evolution typically produces highly aggressive and adaptable species." Threskal studied the human captain on his screen. She looked small, fragile even, but he remembered the scan results. A ship that could operate in conditions that would kill his crew. Weapons that defied easy explanation. A power source that should not exist. He opened the communication channel again. I am Fleet Commander Threscall of the Zarkathi Hegemony. This space belongs to the hegemony by right of conquest. Your vessel is in violation of our borders. You will surrender your ship immediately, or we will take it by force. The human captain's expression did not change. There was no fear, no anger. Just a cool assessment that reminded Threscall uncomfortably of the way he looked at prey. Commander, you are mistaken. This region was claimed by Earth 6 years ago, and has been under our protection since. We have established clear boundaries and filed proper documentation with all known galactic authorities. You are the ones in violation. Your claims mean nothing, Threscall said, his voice hardening. The hegemony recognizes only the law of strength. You have one small ship. I have 40 warships. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to the conventions of war. Resist, and you will be destroyed. For a long moment, Captain Chen simply looked at him. Then she spoke, and her words were quiet, but filled with a certainty that chilled him. Commander Threscall, I strongly advise you to withdraw. You do not understand what you are facing. This is your only warning. Threscall's pride burned. A warning? From a single small ship? He cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. Prepare to fire. Target their engines. I want that ship disabled, but intact. We will study their technology after we take their surrender. Yes, Commander. Weapons. Charging. On the main screen, the human ship remained motionless, as if waiting. Threscall felt a moment of doubt. Remembering the scan results, the Death World classification, the strange calm of the human captain. Then he pushed the feeling aside. 40 ships against 1. The mathematics were simple. All ships, target the unknown vessel. Fire on my command. His finger moved toward the firing control. The human ship moved first. It accelerated so fast that the sensors lost track for half a second. When they reacquired the target, 3 of Threscall's destroyers had already exploded, their shields overloaded, their hulls torn apart by weapons moving at speeds that should not be possible. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers shouted readings and warnings. Alarms blared across all frequencies. On the screen, the Indomitable weaved through his fleet like a blade through flesh. And everywhere it passed, ships died. Threscall gripped his command chair, watching his fleet burn, and finally understood the humans' warning. They had scanned the ship and thought they understood. They had been so very wrong. The doom they faced was not waiting in the future. It was already here, and it wore a human face. The Indomitable moved through space like a predator that had evolved over millions of years to be perfect at one thing: killing. Threscall watched in horror as his destroyers exploded one after another, each death happening so quickly that his crew barely had time to register it before the next ship died. Return fire, he screamed. All ships, engage the enemy. His fleet responded with the discipline of a military force that had conquered worlds. Energy beams lanced through space. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward the human ship, and kinetic rounds filled the void with deadly metal. It was a wall of fire that could have reduced a small moon to dust. The human ship dodged most of it. Simply dodged, moving in ways that should have turned the crew inside into liquid from the acceleration forces. The few shots that did connect splashed harmlessly against armor that seemed to eat energy like a hungry beast. The plasma torpedoes were intercepted by point defense systems so accurate that every single shot destroyed its target. Not one got through. Impossible, breathed the tactical officer. Sir, their point defense has a 100% success rate. Our computers cannot achieve that level of accuracy. Then fire more, Threscall roared. Overwhelm their defenses. 6 of his cruisers focused their fire on the Indomitable at once, creating a killing field of overlapping weapon arcs. The human ship did not try to dodge this time. It flew straight through the barrage, its shields flaring bright but holding. Then it returned fire. The weapons were different this time. Threskal watched as one of his cruisers was hit by something that made all its systems simply stop working. The ship went dark, drifting helplessly in space, its crew alive but trapped in a dead vessel. Another cruiser took a hit from what looked like a nuclear warhead, but the yield was controlled, surgical, destroying only the engine section and leaving the crew compartments intact. "They are targeting specific systems," the tactical officer said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and professional respect. "They are disabling ships, not destroying them. Not anymore." Threskal understood what that meant. The first 3 ships had been a demonstration, a message written in fire and death. Now the humans were being precise, careful. They were proving they could kill but choosing not to. The implication was more terrifying than simple violence. These humans had complete control of the battlefield. "Destroyer Wing 3. Move to intercept pattern Gamma," he ordered. "Cruiser Squadron 2. Provide covering fire. We need to create distance." Quote, the destroyer wing moved to follow his command, 3 fast ships breaking formation to harass the human vessel and give the rest of the fleet time to reorganize. They lasted 17 seconds. The Indomitable pivoted in space, fired 3 times, and all 3 destroyers were crippled, their engines blown apart with frightening accuracy. A communication came through on the emergency channel. It was the captain of the Relentless, one of his most experienced commanders. "Fleet Commander. Request permission to withdraw. We cannot win this engagement." Threskal wanted to refuse. Wanted to rage against the idea of retreat. The Zarkathi did not run from battle. They were the conquerors, the masters of war. But he looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. In less than 20 minutes, he had lost 8 ships completely destroyed and 7 more disabled. The human vessel showed minimal damage, its shields already regenerating. "All ships," he said, the words tasting like poison. "Cease fire and retreat to rally point Omega. Broadcast surrender on all frequencies." The weapons fire stopped. His fleet began to turn, engines charging for the jump to faster-than-light speed that would carry them away from this nightmare. Threskal waited for the final blow, the moment when the human ship would pursue and finish what it had started. Instead, a communication came through. Captain Chen's face appeared on his screen, and her expression had not changed. Still calm, still alert, but with something new in her eyes. Not triumph, but a grim satisfaction. "Commander Threskal, your surrender is acknowledged. However, you will not be permitted to leave this system until certain conditions are met. I am transmitting coordinates to a holding position. You will proceed there immediately at sublight speed. Any ship that attempts to jump to faster-than-light travel will be considered hostile and will be destroyed. Any deviation from the prescribed course will be considered hostile and will be destroyed. Is this understood?" Threskal felt rage burn through his shock. "You would make prisoners of us? We have surrendered, according to the laws of war, and you will be treated according to the laws of war," Captain Chen replied. "The Terran Convention for the Treatment of Prisoners of War guarantees humane conditions, medical care, and eventual repatriation. But you invaded sovereign territory and fired on a military vessel. You are now prisoners, and you will be processed accordingly. Follow the transmitted course. Commander, this is not a negotiation." The transmission ended. Threskal looked at his crew, saw the fear and shame in their eyes, and made the only decision he could. Navigation. Set course for the transmitted coordinates. All ships, maintain formation, and comply with their instructions. The journey took 3 hours at sublight speed. 3 hours of silence on the bridge. 3 hours of the Indomitable shadowing them like a shark following wounded fish. Threskal used the time to review the battle recordings, trying to understand what had happened. The humans fought with an intensity he had never encountered. There was no hesitation, no mercy in the initial strike, just ruthless efficiency. They used multiple weapon types, kinetic rounds that moved at incredible speeds. plasma weapons, nuclear warheads, electromagnetic pulses, and other systems his scientists could not identify. They adapted tactics in real time, shifting from lethal force to precision disabling when it served their purpose. But what disturbed him most was the pattern he saw in their combat doctrine. This was not the fighting style of a young species learning the ways of war. This was refined, perfected through countless iterations. The humans moved like they had fought 1,000 battles, like they had spent lifetimes studying how to kill efficiently and effectively. The tactical officer interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, we are approaching the coordinates. I am detecting a large structure. It appears to be a military station." On the screen, a human space station came into view. It was massive, bristling with weapons, platforms, and sensor arrays. Dozens of other human ships orbited it, ranging from small patrol craft to vessels that dwarfed his flagship. Threskal felt his blood run cold as he realized the truth. The Indomitable was not a warship. It was a patrol vessel. The real military strength of humanity was here, waiting, and it was vast. "Receiving docking instructions," the communications officer said quietly. Threskal straightened in his chair, gathering what dignity remained to him. He had led his fleet into battle against an enemy he did not understand. His pride had cost lives. His assumption of superiority had nearly destroyed everything. Now he would face the consequences, and he would learn what it meant to cross humanity. As his ship moved toward the docking bay, he found himself thinking of Captain Chen's warning, the words he had ignored. "You do not understand what you are facing." She had been right. He had scanned their ship and thought he understood their capabilities. He had seen the tools, but not the hands that forged them. He had measured their strength, but not their will. Now, surrounded by human warships and heading into captivity, Threskal understood one truth with complete clarity. The galaxy had changed the moment. Humanity reached the stars, and nothing would ever be the same again. The conference room was smaller than Threskal expected. He had imagined a grand chamber where the victors would parade their triumph. But instead, he found himself in a simple space with a table, chairs designed for various body types, and walls covered in displays showing star charts and military data. The room spoke of function over form, of beings who cared more about results than appearances. Admiral Victoria Chen entered with 2 guards. She was smaller than Threskal, as all humans seemed to be. Built compact and dense for a world with crushing gravity. Her uniform was simple but marked with symbols that even he could recognize as indicating high rank and long service. Her eyes, those forward-facing predator eyes, studied him with calm assessment. "Please, sit," she said, gesturing to a chair that had been adjusted for his physiology. "Can I offer you water or food? We have analyzed your biological needs and can provide appropriate nutrition." The courtesy surprised him. "I require nothing from you." "As you wish." Chen sat across from him and placed a data tablet on the table. "Let us begin the debriefing. I need to understand the sequence of events that led to the engagement in the Tertius Nebula." Threskal kept his voice steady. "Your ship was in hegemony space. I ordered it to surrender. It refused. I prepared to fire. And your ship attacked first." "Our ship was in Earth-protected space," Chen corrected gently. "We filed territorial claims 6 years ago and have maintained a consistent presence here. Your database should have shown this when you entered the region. The hegemony does not recognize claims by species we have not encountered. We claim by right of strength." A. Chen nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. "I see. So from your perspective, you encountered an unknown vessel in space, you considered yours, demanded surrender, and were prepared to use force when that surrender was denied?" "Yes. And Captain Sarah Chen, commander of the Indomitable, warned you to withdraw before engaging in combat?" "She did," Threskal admitted. "But one ship against 40. The outcome seemed certain. It was certain, Admiral Chen said quietly. Just not in the way you expected. She activated the data tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table. Commander, I want to show you something. This is Earth's current military deployment. The hologram showed a three-dimensional star map. Hundreds of systems glowed with markers indicating human presence. Thousands of ship icons dotted the display, organized into fleets and patrol groups. Threskall stared at the sheer scale of it. We currently maintain 8,000 ships of the Indomitable class on active patrol, Chen explained. They are our smallest military vessels, designed for border security and rapid response. We have 1,200 destroyer-class ships, 400 cruisers, and 73 dreadnoughts. We field 200 full battle fleets across our territories. Threskall felt something break inside him. The ship that destroyed my fleet was your smallest class? A patrol corvette, yes. Designed to operate independently for extended periods, engage threats up to destroyer class, and survive long enough to call for reinforcement if outmatched. Chen paused. Captain Sarah Chen is my daughter, incidentally. She has been commanding the Indomitable for 3 years now. She followed doctrine perfectly in your engagement. Warn. Assess threat level. Respond with appropriate force. Appropriate force, Threskall repeated, almost laughing. She destroyed 8 ships and disabled 7 more. She disabled 15 of your ships initially, Chen corrected. 8 were damaged beyond our ability to quickly repair, so she was forced to eliminate them to prevent them from becoming navigation hazards. The rest of your fleet was intact enough to be escorted here. By our standards, that was a remarkably restrained response to an act of aggression. Restrained, Threskall whispered. The word seemed absurd, given what he had witnessed. Chen's expression softened slightly. Commander, I need you to understand something. This is not the first time we have encountered a species that mistakes our caution for weakness. It will not be the last. So I am going to show you why we build the ships we build, and why we fight the way we fight. She changed the hologram. Now it showed Earth. A blue and green world swirled with white clouds. It looked beautiful. Peaceful, even. Then the view zoomed in, showing massive storms, earthquakes splitting continents, volcanic eruptions, and animals that seemed designed purely to kill. Death World Classification 12, Chen said. But that is only part of the story. Earth did not just breed us to be tough. It bred us to be adaptable, creative, and very, very good at war. The hologram changed again, now showing images that made Threskall's skin crawl. Armies of humans clashing with primitive weapons. Cities burning. Weapons that turned the sky to fire. Mushroom clouds rising over empty wastelands. For 10,000 years, we fought ourselves, Chen continued, her voice steady but heavy with old pain. We perfected every form of warfare. Ground combat, naval warfare, aerial combat, space combat. We built weapons that could destroy our entire planet, and came within moments of using them more than once. We fought wars that killed millions, learned from them, and fought again. Why? Threskall asked. Why would a species do this to itself? Resources, ideology, religion, territory, fear, pride. Chen listed the reasons like reading from a sad catalog. Sometimes good reasons, sometimes terrible ones. But every war taught us something. Every conflict refined our tactics. Every weapon we built to fight ourselves made us better at fighting anyone. She leaned forward, and Threskall saw something in her eyes that chilled him more than any weapon display. Understanding. We know war, Commander. We know it in our blood and bones. We know the cost of it. We know what it does to civilizations, to families, to individual souls. We have paid that cost over and over again. Then why build such a military? He demanded. Why create such terrible weapons if you understand their cost? Because we learned another lesson. Chen said softly. We learned that the only thing worse than being strong enough to destroy your enemies is being too weak to stop them from destroying you. We learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of enough strength that conflict becomes unthinkable. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. We have been in space for less than 2 centuries. In that time, we have encountered 15 species. 12 were peaceful, and we trade with them freely. 3 were hostile. 2 withdrew when they understood what we were. The third, she turned back to him. The third tried to enslave a colony world we had established diplomatic relations with. We removed them from that world in 16 hours, and made it clear that such actions would not be tolerated in our presence. And now we are the 4th hostile species you have encountered, Threscall said. That depends on you, Chen replied. On what you report to your hegemony. On whether your people choose to see this as a defeat that requires revenge, or as a lesson that requires learning. She returned to the table and brought up a new document. These are our terms. The hegemony will withdraw from all territories within 50 light-years of human-protected space. You will cease all hostile actions against species under Earth protection. You will enter negotiations for a non-aggression treaty. In exchange, we will return your ships, your crews, and provide medical care for all wounded. We will also share some of our defensive technology to help you protect your legitimate borders. Threscall read the terms, expecting tricks or hidden clauses. Instead, he found them straightforward, even generous. You would give us technology? After we attacked you, we would rather have you as a neutral neighbor than an enemy, Chen said simply. War is expensive in lives and resources. Peace is cheaper for everyone. We are offering you the chance to choose peace with dignity, and if the hegemony refuses, Chen's expression became hard as steel. Then you will learn what we are truly capable of. The Indomitable showed you restraint. If you force us into actual war, you will face the full strength of humanity, and I promise you, Commander, you do not want that. We have weapons we did not use on you, strategies we did not employ, capabilities we have not revealed. She stood, indicating the meeting was ending. You have 3 days to recover, to review the data we have provided, and to prepare your report. Then you will be escorted to the edge of our space and released. What happens next is up to your people. As Threscall was led from the room, he looked back at Admiral Chen. She was studying the star map again, and he realized she looked tired. Burdened by responsibilities, he was only beginning to understand. She was not a conqueror celebrating victory. She was a guardian, hoping she had done enough to prevent worse violence. In that moment, Threscall finally understood what made humanity dangerous. It was not their ships or their weapons. It was their knowledge of what war truly cost and their determination to make others understand that cost before it was too late. The Grand Council chamber of the Zarkathi hegemony had stood for 3,000 years, its walls carved from a single, massive crystal that caught and reflected light in patterns meant to inspire awe and obedience. 73 council members sat in a circular arrangement, representing the worlds and fleets that made up their civilization. At the center stood Threscall, no longer a proud fleet commander but a messenger bearing news that would change everything. Let me understand this correctly, High Counselor Vrathzek said, his voice dripping with contempt. You commanded 40 warships. You encountered a single small vessel crewed by a previously unknown species. And you surrendered after losing less than a quarter of your force? Threscall kept his spine straight, despite the shame burning in his chest. High Counselor, I surrendered to prevent the complete destruction of my fleet. The human vessel was superior in every measurable way. Faster, better armed, better defended, and crewed by beings who understood warfare at a level we do not. Impossible, declared Counselor Threshnak, leader of the military faction. We have conquered 17 systems. Our military doctrine has proven itself time and again. You simply failed to employ proper tactics. Then watch, Threscall said quietly. He activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The recording of the battle played out in 3 dimensions, showing the Indomitable moving through his fleet like a blade through flesh, each strike precise and devastating. The chamber fell silent. Counselors who had been preparing rebuttals found themselves staring at the display with growing horror. Ships exploded, systems failed, and the human vessel moved with impossible grace through patterns of fire that should have destroyed it 10 times over. When the recording ended, Counselor Mreshval of the Diplomatic Corps spoke. How many species have military technology this advanced? According to the humans, none. Threskall replied. They are relatively new to space, but they have been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years on their own world. Earth is a death world, classification 12. They evolved in conditions that kill most species, and they evolved to kill each other. He brought up the historical data the humans had provided. Images of ancient battles, wars that consumed entire continents, weapons that could sterilize planets. The council members watched in growing disbelief as humanity's violent history unfolded before them. This cannot be real, Threshnok said, but his voice lacked conviction. No species wages war on itself so consistently. They did, Threskel said. And every war taught them lessons that we, who conquered weaker species, never learned. They know how to fight enemies with their own technology, their own intelligence, their own desperation. When they fight us, it is not a new challenge. It is simply another variation of what they have already mastered. High Counselor Vrathzek leaned forward. What do they want? Tribute? Territory? Submission? Threskall displayed the human terms. They want us to withdraw 50 light-years from their space. They want a non-aggression treaty. They want us to stop attacking species under their protection. In exchange, they offer to return our ships, our crews, and even share some defensive technology. Defensive technology? Mreshval asked. They would arm a potential enemy? They say they would rather have us as neutral neighbors than enemies. They claim war is too expensive in lives and resources. Threskall paused. I believe them. Their Admiral Chen spoke of war with the tone of someone who has seen too much of it and wants no more. Threshnok slammed his hand on the council desk. This is a trap. They show us mercy now, make us dependent on their technology, and then strike when we are weak. We must respond with overwhelming force. Assemble the 9th, 10th, and 11th battle fleets. Show these humans what true military might looks like. Several counselors murmured agreement. The hegemony had never backed down from a challenge, never negotiated from a position of weakness. To accept the human terms would be to admit inferiority. But Counselor Mreshval stood, and his voice cut through the rising tide of militant voices. Before we commit to a path that may doom our species, I propose we send a single fleet to test the humans' defenses. If they are truly as formidable as Commander Thresskall claims, we will know after one engagement. If they are not, we will have lost only a small portion of our forces. The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but allowed everyone to save face. Fleet Marshal Krathvel would take 300 ships, the largest battle force the hegemony had assembled in 50 years, and perform a reconnaissance in force of human space. If the humans were truly as dangerous as claimed, the fleet would withdraw. If not, they would press the attack. Thresskall tried to speak, tried to warn them that 300 ships would die just as surely as 40 had. But the council had made its decision, and he was no longer in a position to influence policy. 48 hours later, Fleet Marshal Krathvel's armada jumped into human space. Thresskall watched the battle reports from his quarters, no longer trusted with command but kept close for his knowledge of the enemy. The reports came in swift and brutal succession. First hour. Human forces engaged. Enemy numbers approximately 100 ships, far below hegemony strength. Second hour. Heavy resistance encountered. Human tactics unconventional and highly effective. Losses mounting. Fourth hour. Request. Reinforcement. Repeat. Request. Immediate. Reinforcement. Sixth hour. Fleet in full retreat. 60% casualties. Humans pursuing. Eighth hour. Emergency evacuation of command ship. Fleet Marshal Crothville, killed in action. Surviving ships scattering. 48 hours after it began, the battle was over. Of the 300 ships that entered human space, 97 returned. The rest were destroyed or captured. The humans had broadcast the entire battle on open frequencies, ensuring every species in the region could watch the hegemony's humiliation. The message attached to the broadcast was simple. This is what restraint looks like. Imagine what war would bring. Threskal was summoned back to the Grand Council. This time, the chamber was quiet. The counselors who had called for war now sat in stunned silence, watching recordings of their finest fleet being systematically destroyed by a force 1/3 its size. High Counselor Vrothzek looked older than Threskal remembered. "Commander, you tried to warn us. We did not listen. The fault is ours." He turned to the full council. "The question now is whether we compound our mistake with pride or correct it with wisdom." Counselor Threshnak, leader of the military faction, stood slowly. "I advocated for war. I believed our superiority was unquestionable. I was wrong." The admission clearly cost him dearly. If we continue this conflict, humanity will destroy us. Not because they want to, but because we will force them to. I vote we accept their terms. One by one, the counselors voted. When the count was finished, the decision was unanimous. The Zarkathi hegemony would sue for peace. Threskal was chosen as ambassador, perhaps as punishment for his defeat, perhaps because he alone had seen humanity clearly from the beginning. He prepared the formal communication, choosing words carefully, knowing that the fate of his entire species might rest on whether the humans believed their sincerity. The human response came swiftly. Admiral Chen herself would lead the negotiations. A summit would be held at a neutral station. Terms would be discussed, refined, and formalized. As Threskal prepared to depart for the summit, he received a private message from Chen. It contained no threats, no gloating, just a simple statement. "We look forward to building a peaceful future. Together. War has taken enough from both our peoples." Standing on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars stream past as they traveled toward the summit, Threskal reflected on how quickly everything had changed. A month ago, the hegemony had seemed invincible. Now, they were negotiating peace with a species they had tried to bully into submission. But perhaps, he thought, this was not defeat. Perhaps it was something rarer and more valuable. The chance to learn from a mistake before it became a catastrophe. The humans had given them that chance, had shown them the abyss without pushing them into it. He wondered what kind of species had the power to destroy and the wisdom to choose mercy instead. Then he remembered Admiral Chen's tired eyes, the weight she carried, and understood. They were a species who knew exactly what destruction cost and had decided the price was too high. The hegemony had learned that lesson the hard way. But at least they were still alive to learn it. 5 years had transformed the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. Threskal stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a massive structure built jointly by 43 species, watching ships from a dozen different civilizations move in coordinated patterns. It still amazed him every time he saw it. Former enemies working together, sharing technology and resources, united by principles that humanity had insisted on and then helped everyone else understand. The Terran Accords had reshaped everything. Humanity had not demanded territory or tribute after their victory. Instead, they had demanded something far more radical: the complete abolition of conquest warfare and the establishment of a mutual defense network for all signatory species. Any civilization that signed the Accords agreed to resolve disputes through negotiation rather than force, and to come to the aid of any other signatory under attack. At first, Only a handful of smaller species had signed, desperate for protection against empires like the hegemony. But as more joined, as the benefits became clear, even the great powers began to reconsider their positions. The hegemony had been among the first major civilizations to sign, their recent defeat making the choice easier. Others followed slowly, carefully, testing whether humanity truly meant to enforce these new rules. They did. On 3 separate occasions, aggressive species tried to raid or conquer Accord's signatories. Each time, human fleets responded with overwhelming force, disabled the aggressors, and then offered them the same choice: join the Accords and enjoy their protection, or remain outside and face isolation from the growing network of peaceful trade and cooperation. 2 of the 3 chose to join. The third retreated to their home systems and remained there, neither part of the Accords nor actively hostile. Humanity seemed content with that outcome. They did not demand universal participation, only that those who refused to join also refused to raid those who had. Ambassador Threscal, the ceremony is about to begin. He turned to find Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Sarah Chen, standing behind him. She had been promoted twice in the past 5 years. Her success at the Tertius Nebula, marking her as one of humanity's rising military leaders. She looked older now, carrying the same weight her mother had borne, the burden of being responsible for so many lives. Admiral Chen, he greeted her formally. I was just admiring the view. 5 years ago, I would not have believed such a thing possible. Neither would I, she admitted, moving to stand beside him. When I fired on your fleet that day, I thought it was the beginning of another war. Instead, it became the beginning of something better. Together they watched the ships outside. Zarkathi destroyers flying in formation with human cruisers. Valkyrie frigates escorting freighters from a dozen species. Patrol groups with mixed crews learning each other's tactics and languages. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force was not just a human military with others tagging along. It was a true coalition, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. The ceremony, Admiral Chen reminded him gently. They made their way to the main auditorium, where representatives from all Accord signatories had gathered. The occasion was significant. The formal inauguration of the Peacekeeping Force Academy, where military officers from every species would train together, learning not just tactics and strategy, but the philosophy behind humanity's approach to warfare. Threscal had been asked to speak, representing the species that had first tested humanity's resolve and learned the hardest lessons. He took the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. Predators and prey species sitting together, former enemies, now allies, all united by a shared commitment to something better than endless cycles of conquest and revenge. 5 years ago, he began, I commanded a fleet that entered human space with the arrogance of a civilization that had never faced true defeat. I believed strength meant the ability to take what you wanted. I believed power meant making others fear you. I was wrong. He paused, letting the words settle. The humans taught me that true strength is knowing when not to use force. True power is having the capability to destroy, but choosing instead to protect. When my fleet surrendered, I expected the treatment we had given others: enslavement, humiliation, or death. Instead, we received medical care, fair treatment, and an offer of peace. I returned to my people, expecting them to dismiss me as weak for accepting these terms. Instead, they sent another fleet to avenge what they saw as dishonor. That fleet was destroyed, not because humanity wanted war, but because we forced their hand. And still, after defeating us twice, they offered peace. Threscal looked directly at Admiral Victoria Chen, sitting in the front row. The humans showed us what we could not see ourselves, that the path we were on led only to eventual destruction. Every species we conquered created enemies. Every act of aggression built resentment. We were strong, but we were building a future where that strength would eventually fail, and we would face revenge from those we had wronged. Humanity offered us a different path. Not the path of conquest, but the path of cooperation. Not the strength of domination, but the strength of mutual protection. It has not been easy. Many in my civilization still struggle with these concepts. But 5 years of peace have done more for our prosperity than 50 years of conquest ever did. He gestured to the officers assembled in the auditorium. You who will teach and train at this academy carry a sacred responsibility. You will teach tactics and strategy, yes, but more importantly, you will teach the wisdom humanity learned through 10,000 years of hard lessons. That war is a tool to be used only when all else fails. That victory means preventing conflict rather than winning it, and that the greatest strength is measured not in ships destroyed, but in lives preserved. The applause was genuine, coming from beings who had learned these lessons through their own painful experiences. As Threskal returned to his seat, Admiral Victoria Chen took the podium. "Thank you, Ambassador," she said. "Your words remind us why we built this academy, why we created the Accords, why we work so hard to maintain peace." She looked out at the assembled officers. When humans reached the stars, we carried with us the memory of our own worst mistakes. We had nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We had perfected weapons that could end civilizations. We understood war in ways we wished we did not. We came to space determined not to repeat our errors on a galactic scale. When we encountered other species, we made a promise to ourselves. We would be strong enough that no one could threaten us. But we would use that strength only to protect, never to conquer. We would share what we had learned so others would not have to learn it the hard way. This academy represents that promise. Here, you will learn human military doctrine, but you will also learn why we developed it. You will study our history, our mistakes, our triumphs, and our regrets. You will train alongside humans and see how we think about warfare. And then you will take that knowledge back to your own fleets and adapt it to your cultures and your needs. She paused, her expression serious. Make no mistake. The galaxy is still dangerous. There are species that have not joined the Accords, threats that may emerge from unexplored space. We maintain our fleets not because we seek war, but because peace requires vigilance. The peacekeeping force exists to ensure that those who would prey on the weak think twice, and that those who need protection can sleep safely. After the ceremony, Threskal found himself alone with both Admirals Chen on the observation deck again. The younger Chen had a question she had clearly been holding back. "Ambassador, I have wondered for 5 years, but never felt it appropriate to ask. When you scanned the Indomitable that day in the nebula, when you saw the readings that made no sense, did you feel any fear? Any doubt?" Threskal considered the question carefully. "I felt unease. The data conflicted with my assumptions about what a small ship should be capable of. But fear? No. I was too confident in our superiority to feel fear." He paused. "I did not feel fear until you moved. Until 3 of my ships exploded in the time it took my heart to beat twice. That was when I finally understood the warning you had given me. I am sorry I could not make you understand without demonstration," Admiral Sarah Chen said quietly. "I tried to warn you, but words were not enough." "Do not apologize for doing your duty," Threskal replied. "You showed the minimum force necessary to achieve your objective, making me understand that continued aggression would be futile. If you had shown too little force, my people would have sent more ships. If you had shown too much, we might have felt we had no choice but to fight to the death. You calibrated your response perfectly." He looked out at the ships moving in formation. "That is what I try to teach the younger officers in my delegation. Humanity's greatest weapon is not your technology or your tactics. It is your judgment, knowing when to show strength and when to show mercy, when to fight and when to extend a hand." Admiral Victoria Chen smiled. "We make mistakes still. We are not perfect, but we try. That is all anyone can ask," Threskal said. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching a Zarkathi destroyer and a human cruiser complete a joint patrol exercise. The ships moved with coordinated precision, covering each other's weak points, operating as a single unit, despite their different designs and crews. Threscall thought about the day in the Tertius Nebula, when he had ordered his fleet to fire on a single small ship. He thought about how close his people had come to destruction, through pride and ignorance. And he thought about how humanity, which could have taken revenge or claimed territory, had instead offered something far more valuable: partnership. A soft alarm chimed, indicating the next session was about to begin. As they moved toward the conference rooms where the day's diplomatic work would continue, Threscall reflected on how far they had all come. 5 years was nothing in the span of civilizations, but it was long enough to prove that a different path was possible. The galaxy was changing, one treaty at a time, one shared patrol at a time, one trained officer at a time. And at the center of that change was a species that had learned wisdom through suffering and now shared that wisdom freely. They had scanned Earth's warship and understood their doom. But that doom had become salvation, and Threscall had never been more grateful to have been wrong.